I got orders to go to Korea, and I didn't want to go to Korea because I had already done a short tour in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. And I tried to negotiate with my assignments guy. I would go to Korea to be the comptroller for Korea, but they would have to tell me to send me back to Atlanta and stabilize me for 3 years, and they wouldn't do it. So I said, well, then I'm retiring. And at the time, I was an aide to a 3-star general. So I went in and talked to my general. I had already gone through a series of interviews with Coca-Cola. They had already offered me a job. And I went in and talked to him, and I said, I've got this offer to go to be a finance manager at Coca-Cola. I said, what do you think? And he goes, take the job, drop your papers. And literally in 2 weeks, I was out. I was gone. I went to Coke, and I was a finance manager. First 5 years I was at Coke, I got promoted 4 times. And it was my 3rd job at Coke. And then I got this job where I had
Hey, let's welcome John J.P. Phillips, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame honoree who wrote Boots to Loafers, the go-to guide for veterans transition. Good to see you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with transition. I had a few folks, veterans, who were in the process of just leaving, retiring from the Army or other branches of the armed forces. Do you have some advice for veterans who transition right now?
Well, I'd say, the first thing right off the bat is you've got to start early, and you got to really, you'll come to a decision point while you're in that you've got to decide, am I staying or am I going? I hit that decision point when I got to about the 10-year mark. And by then, you're half invested. You might as well hang in for another 10 at least. So, once you make that determination that you're going to, get out, you really need to buckle down and start doing your homework and start, I would say probably one of the most important things you can do right off the bat is start establishing your new network outside of the military, which back when I transitioned out, we barely had the internet. So you can imagine that. We barely had email. So it was quite different. And I think back and I wonder, how did I get all this stuff done when we didn't have all of those capabilities, But, the one thing the Army taught me is figure it out. And that's what I did. So, start early, get your network built, start working on your resume. That takes a long time. I always recommend an organization that's right here local in Atlanta, Hire Heroes USA. They pump out resumes. It's free. They do, I think, some of the best resumes in the business. They stay up to speed on what are current good best practices in business. So really deciding that that's what you want to do is get out. And then you got to kind of change your mindset and start focusing on that. And I think as a minimum, it's a year out. I'd say 18 months is probably ideal because it takes time to build that network outside the military and reach out and get connected with some of those nonprofits out here that are here to help you. They will help you grow your network and they will point you in the right direction.
And what about LinkedIn? I know that you're pretty active there. Would you suggest also starting a LinkedIn and then connecting with folks, maybe even creating content? Would that be a good idea for veterans who are transitioning?
Absolutely. LinkedIn to me is, I call myself a LinkedIn junkie. I'm out on it all day, every day. I intentionally put controversial things out there when it comes to things that are going on, especially in the Army, because it's the most area I'm familiar with. Because I want to stir up conversation. I want to hear other people's perspectives and see what their viewpoint is. And especially other veterans, they've earned that right to step up and speak their mind, in my opinion. So absolutely. And then using LinkedIn and the multiple tools that they have that can help you build your network where you can go out and actually target specific people. Say you want to go work for the Coca-Cola company, where I worked for almost 2 decades when I retired from the Army. You can go out and target people specifically that work at Coca-Cola and start asking, make the connection and then, hey, can I ask you questions about the company to better understand the culture? How do you interview? Blah, blah, blah. If you're in California, who's a good contact out here I can talk to in HR or whatever, because you got to get your foot in the door. And then one of the big things with, especially with Fortune 500 companies, is if you can find someone out there that is a veteran that is inside those companies, that's part of their business resource groups, that's your foot in the door. But leveraging LinkedIn, and not only, and then the multiple classes that you can take online through LinkedIn, elevator pitch, you name it, they got it. And take advantage of all that.
Yeah, and I can add to this that to me the podcast was possible because of LinkedIn, because of the people I connected with, like you, John. I just reached out. I found a person interesting, and then I invited them to the podcast. And once I did a bunch of podcasts, I realized that many of the guests became my friends or even mentors, even business partners. So that's an amazing tool you're doing. Because I know a few veterans who are running their own podcasts. They're usually niche focused. Either it's about Navy, or one of my friends runs this Rangers focused podcast. This can also be an amazing networking tool. I also want to ask you about, because what we talked about so far is more on the side of career and jobs and networking, and the other side of the transition period is the psychological and the mental side, because it's a completely different world when you're outside of the military. Do you have some advice or suggestions for people who are struggling to adapt to the civilian life, or still trying to figure out how to transition in that regard?
Well, right off the bat, two things that popped in my head was you got to learn the lingo, the language. Corporate America, they have their acronyms as well, just like the military does. So you got to learn the language. You got to learn who are the movers and shakers, who are who are the people to get things done, and work your way into that network. The other thing is the culture. I would say the culture is way different. I always say you can't. In the military, there's a lot of grab ass that goes on and joking, and a lot of the jokes are off color, and outside of the military would probably get you fired in some company because HR would just, their hair would be on fire. Don't don't find out about that the hard way. That's where your network comes in handy. Finding a mentor inside the company that can help shape and mold you and let you know what's acceptable and what's not. And really just doing your homework to find out what is the corporate culture like in whatever company it is. So, I worked at the Coca-Cola company, had a very, very conservative company. When I started working there, it was suits. You could take your jacket off when you were in your office, but when you left your office, you put your jacket on. By the time I retired from Coca-Cola, I was wearing Keen sandals, blue jeans, and a golf shirt, and I no longer had an office. My office was in my backpack. So culturally, they had changed big time. And then you compare it to like a UPS. UPS was very military like. You had to have a certain haircut, no facial hair whatsoever, in very conservative dress. You can't wear shorts or anything like that. Day, rules are out the door. You can wear it, you can have a beard, you can have hair, you can do this, you can do that. So, you really need to understand the corporate culture inside the company that you're targeting. Um, and I would tell those that are transitioning, just don't target one company. Target multiple companies and do your homework, because you may think like Coke is the best thing since sliced bread. And then once you start to learn about it, you're like, there ain't no way in hell I'm going there.
Yeah, that's great advice. What about um the advantages of being a veteran at a workforce? Because there are a bunch of skills that military teaches you: leadership, and how to get things done, and you have the structures and all that kinds of stuff. How can a veteran stand out with their military background, and how can they apply their skills in this new business context?
I think there's a lot of soft skills that a veteran brings to the plate. I would tell you touched on leadership. The one thing that a veteran needs to understand is the military, and really, no matter what service they're in, has invested thousands of dollars in their training and leadership training. Don't expect that to happen in the corporate world. It's not going to happen. They don't do that. I don't I think they value leadership, but what they don't value is there's got to be training and things like that that have to go on through your career, whatever that may be, and whatever company it is. But training dollars in a company. So we're sitting in August right now. We're going to be coming up on fourth quarter. Those training dollars in those companies right now are being looked at because if they're not used, they're going to be swept and redeployed into marketing that's going to drive profits. That's all about profits. And that's the big difference in the military. There's no such thing as a profit and loss statement, a P&L. It's all spend. If you don't spend it, you lose it. So, I think there's all kind of skills that you bring to the plate. There are probably a number of things that you may have done in the military that you thought were kind of, don't worry about it. Those types of things actually may apply once you get out. Don't discount what I call the hey you jobs. You're standing around and they go, hey you, go do this. Those hey you jobs can actually mean something when you get out and get into the corporate sector. The other thing is a lot of things that get people's hair on fire in the corporate world to a veteran are like, are you kidding me? No one's shooting at me. I'm not in hostile environment here, although sometimes corporate America can be very hostile, but it's one of those situations that you kind of keep a calm head about things and you freak out later, but you deal with the situation and you're very decisive and you really, you step up and you take charge, but you got to be careful with that so people don't feel too threatened because that's very common as well.
And talking about leadership principles on your personal side, you as a person who served in the army and then transitioned, what leadership principles can you share with the listeners, maybe even those who have never served, but something that you bring to the table and you find very practical in this corporate world?
Well, I kind of keep it simple. There are books written on leadership. So I think that at the top of the list is take care of your people. I mean, as a manager or as a director or as a VP and whatever, at the end of the day, it's the people in the trenches that are cranking out the spreadsheets or doing this or doing that and putting in the extra hours. Those are the people that are getting it done. And all you're doing is directing the traffic. That's all you're doing. And appreciating what they do and making a personal connection with them where you're actually, when you, like at Coke, my managers and directors used to get all kind of bent out of shape because I would get up and start walking around and talking to people and they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing walking around? I'm connecting with my employees and having a conversation with them and get to know who they are. And then you're going to understand what their strengths and weaknesses are. But I think fundamentally, despite all the laundry list of leadership principles and all this other stuff, I think the absolute foundation is people. Take care of your people. Get to know your people. And that way, when the day comes when you've got to ask them to do something extraordinary or above and beyond, they don't hesitate. They're right there. And it happened to me at Coke. I brought a lot of the principles that I used in the military into Coca-Cola, and a lot of people were like, what in the hell's going on? We've never seen anybody do things like this. But at the end of the day, it all worked out. Everything from stand-up meetings where everybody is standing up and you go around the horn. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And then you give out your guidance for the day or for the week. Any alibis? Anybody? Anything? Okay, break. We're done. See you guys next week. Everybody's like, holy crap. And then putting people that work for you in charge of things and then holding them accountable. That was one of those things that was quite rare, that people were like, you mean this is my baby? I'm in charge of this? I'm like, yeah. And you're going to come to me with a plan and we're going to sit down, we're going to talk through it. And then you're going to report to me every week on what your status is. And then I'm going to help guide you through this. And that's a learning process for them. A lot of managers are not comfortable doing that because they're micromanagers. It's like their thing, But again, going back to the original question, I think the biggest thing is people.
And how did you adapt it so well and learn so many of these business corporate American skills coming from the military background? Have you had to read books and try to study that, or did it come out naturally, or just It's interesting how you personally learned all of these principles.
I didn't read a lot of books on all this stuff. To me, it was kind of, it really boiled down. This is how you treat each other fairly. I was given opportunities as I was coming up the ranks to do certain things. I was fortunate that I did not have a lot of micromanagers. They let me, it's a saying I use often. When in charge, take charge. And that's exactly what I did. And I instilled that in people that worked for me. And I gave them the freedom to fail or the freedom to succeed. And, if they happened to stumble along the way, I didn't chew their ass. I brought them in, we sat down, and we walked through the problem when we solved it. And that's how you grow, and that's how you become a better person at what you're doing. And I used to do the same thing when I was on active duty with my soldiers. I didn't really change much. The big change that I went through was more on the cultural aspects, on what you do and don't do in the corporate world. Because it is, like I said earlier, it is way different in the military than it is, when you're running around in a suit or whatever. So you almost have to be a little bit of a chameleon and kind of change as things evolve, but you have to do that in the military too. So in the Army, if I was an artilleryman in the Army, but I spent most of my career in heavy artillery. When I went to a light artillery unit, it was way different, but I figured it out. So you got to be able to figure out what do you got to do to change, from what's acceptable, not acceptable. What do I have to do? Who are the movers and shakers? Who are the people that I need to meet in order to get things done around here? So you don't run into my pet peeves. I can't stand bureaucrats. So how do I get around the bureaucrats to get things done?
Nice, nice. And he also briefly mentioned mentorship, especially in the context of transition. But in general, how do you see value of mentorship in the army versus in the corporate world? Is it different? Is it the same? And how important it is in general?
Well, in the Army, it was easier because as I went from unit to unit, I would meet different senior leaders that I could rely on for advice, when it came like, what kind of next assignment do I want to have? What's the best unit or job or whatever? I mean, I kind of did the same thing in the corporate world where you make your connections. I got to know several very senior people. And while I was at Coca-Cola, I was in finance. So one of the first jobs I had in finance is I managed all of the budgets for all the senior executives from the CEO down. So I knew all the dirty laundry, and I knew everything that was going on from a financial standpoint of all these senior leaders. So that gave me an opportunity to meet with all of them individually, one on one, several times during the year. And I would kind of, at the end of a meeting, I'd say, hey, can you give me some advice on blah, 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 blah? Well, guess what? Those guys and gals have got egos. And for them to give advice, shit, there ain't enough time. They just yak, 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 yak. But, it gave me an opportunity to get to know them better and for them to get to know me. And then they would help me through the ranks.
And how did you get into finance and becoming so close to these senior people in the first place?
Well, so I was the weird guy in college in ROTC. I majored in finance. So my thought process was there's life after 20. So after 20 years in the military, I got something I can fall back on. So when I hit I think I was about my 8th year, and I was a captain, senior captain. I was coming out of command, and I had an opportunity to go to grad school. So I competed and got selected to go to Syracuse University and get my MBA. And then I got, as a secondary specialty, I was a comptroller. So I managed money and I shot artillery. That was my career track. And then I got toward the end of my career, and I didn't realize it was going to be the end of my career. I got orders to go to Korea, and I didn't want to go to Korea because I'd already done a short tour in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. And I tried to negotiate with my assignments guy I would go to Korea to be the comptroller for Korea, but they would have to send me back to Atlanta and stabilize me for 3 years, and they wouldn't do it. So I said, well, then I'm retiring. And at the time, I was an aide to a 3-star general. So I went in and talked to my general. I had already gone through a series of interviews with Coca-Cola. They had already offered me a job. And I went in and talked to him and I said, I've got this offer to go to be a finance manager at Coca-Cola. I said, what do you think? And he goes, take the job, drop your papers. And literally in 2 weeks, I was out. I was gone. So I went to Coke and I was a finance manager. And then it was actually my third job my second promotion and third job at Coca-Cola. The first 5 years I was at Coke, I got promoted 4 times. And it was my third job at Coke. And then I got this job where I had a team of 5 people and we managed the budgets for all the executives in the company from the CEO down. So it was pretty eye-opening experience. I got to know the CFO quite well, really good guy. He would actually come down and we would just sit around and talk. And my manager got very nervous about that. She's like, what the hell's going on? The CFO's down here. And I'm like, we're just talking, just kind of hit it off. But it all kind of started when I was in college and kind of knew that I needed to have some sort of solid degree to fall back on, and finance was it. And kind of the rest is history.
All right. And before we wrap up the episode, any advice for young people in their early 20s, maybe looking back to your own life, something that you would tell yourself when you were younger?
Boy, first thing I would tell you is stop and smell the roses, because time is going to fly by very fast and you're not going to realize it. Take the opportunities, take risk. Getting fired is not the worst thing in the world. You can actually recover and learn from that and move on. Find what is you need to ask yourself, what is my purpose? And find out what that is, and then kind of dig deep into whatever that purpose is and enjoy that. Take advantage of getting an education, a solid education. The one thing no one can ever take away from you is your education. So take advantage of that and capitalize on that. Enjoy life. Enjoy what you're doing. If you're miserable in a job, don't run to a job just because they're paying you a lot of money, because that is never going to work out good for you. Be happy at what you're doing. Grow your network. And just enjoy yourself. Life's too damn short. Find what your purpose is, especially for the veterans. They have a purpose when they're in the military. They're driven. Every day you're working hard. All of a sudden, that all comes to an end, and you find yourself in a situation, and you're like, WTF. You got to be kidding me. This is what everybody gets excited about, type of thing. So find a purpose, and then, stop and I had mentioned, stop and smell the roses. Take advantage of the time that you have off. I would definitely tell veterans that are transitioning out of active duty and into the corporate world, or just getting out, take like a month and just decompress. Do yourself a favor. You don't think you're burning the candle at both ends, but you really have been. So do yourself a favor and take care of yourself. Go take some time off and decompress and get prepared for the next stage of your life. But take advantage of those times that you have to go see things around the world and do things in a different vein, not in uniform, and enjoy life, because you're going to find out life's pretty damn short, and you really do need to stop and smell the roses. Be around your family, whether it's your immediate family or extended family, because at the end of the day, those are the people that are going to be there. They're going to be by your side. So never forget that, and be willing to take some risk every once in a while. Sometimes it's okay to kind of step out there and be bold. Getting fired isn't the worst thing in the world. Getting fired sometimes can be the best thing in the world for you. Going after that job that's a 6-figure job and it's going to pay me a lot of money, a lot of times you're going to find out that's really not what it's cut out to be. Being happy at what you're doing, and then making the determination that I'm going to be the best at whatever that is I can possibly be, and do what you can, because the one thing I have found out through the years is opportunities come around when you least expect them. So, have an open mind in order to pursue those opportunities. But I would say take every chance you can to be happy. Go see the world, go do things you've never done before, and just enjoy yourself, but be focused.
All righty.
Not very sexy, but that's kind of at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And for the veterans listening and maybe even beyond just veterans, I'll leave the link to your book in the description for the video. So if you want to check it out on Amazon, I think I found it Boots to Loafers.
Yeah, Barnes& and Noble has it. I think Amazon may have so there's 2 books. There's the original Boots to Loafers, Finding Your New True North, and then there's Boots to Loafers, Still Finding Your New True North, which I just released. It's less than a year. It was 6 months ago. So Barnes& and Nobles has it, and then if you would, put my link to LinkedIn out there. Anybody can connect with me on LinkedIn if they have questions. One of the battles that I fight on a daily basis for veterans is with the VA and filing their disability claims. And how do you go about doing a lot of those things? And I'm more than happy to help people if they're running into issues and kind of give them some advice. I'm not going to do their claim for them. I'm not allowed to even do that, but I can certainly give them advice because I've been down that road several times with many veterans. So, and also for those veterans that are in the Atlanta area, reach out and join Vetlanta, an organization that I helped find. I founded them 12 years ago. We have a summit coming up on the 20th of August next week at the Chick-fil-A College Football Hall of Fame downtown Atlanta. Starts at 5 p.m. I suggest getting there early. It's going to be a great event. And I suggest they come there because there they can start building their network and they can start connecting with many nonprofits that are there to support veterans that are in the Atlanta area, as well as I don't know if you ever heard of the military. It's called MIC, Military Something Influencer Conference, the MIC. It's going to be in Atlanta in September, and the founder and the guy that runs that event, which is a huge 4-day event, is going to be there. Great opportunity to network and meet people that you otherwise will not have a chance to meet. So that's 20 August, 5 o'clock, Chick-fil-A Hall of Fame, Football Hall of Fame, downtown Atlanta. And connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with you. I got about 25,000 connections right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you, sir, for joining the show, for sharing all of the
Sure.
advice and stories. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah. And stay in touch, Danny.